Welcome back. Here's a pop quiz. Would Mitt Romney's economic plan kill jobs for teachers, firefighters, and police officers? Here's what Mitt thinks.
Well, that's a very strange accusation. Of course, teachers and firemen and policemen are hired at the local level and also by states. The federal government doesn't pay for teachers, firefighters, or policemen. So obviously that's completely absurd.
Now, that's what he says, but here are the facts. Romney's plan would cut billions of dollars a year in funding for teachers, firefighters, and police officers. And he would do it on day one. Let's start with jobs for teachers. The federal government reportedly pays for about 11% of the nation's public school costs. The money comes from programs like Title I and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It comes from No Child Left Behind, too. All of those federal programs fund the hiring and training of teachers. Let's talk about the police. The Community-Oriented Policing Services Program, or COPS, has been directly funding police hires with federal dollars since 1994. The Congressional Research Service estimates 117,000 officers were hired through COPS last year. Again, that's all federal dollars. Firefighters get hired through federal grants under something called the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Program. About 3,400 firefighters will get hired this year, thanks to federal dollars. Here's where it gets tricky. Mitt Romney wants to shrink government and cut programs, and he wants to do it on his first day in office, but he won't be specific. So Greg Sargent at the Washington Post asked the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities to analyze what we do know about Romney's cuts. The center calculates that Romney's budget would require a 29% cut across the board. So federal programs that fund teacher, police, and firefighter jobs would take a $12 billion hit. If Romney doesn't cut those, he's going to have to squeeze other programs, like Medicare. There are two things to remember here, my friends. First, federal money does hire teachers, cops, and firefighters. Second, Romney's cuts could be devastating to the people we depend on the most. Let's bring in R.T. Rybak, mayor of Minneapolis and vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. Mayor, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Now, given all the things we've just kind of helped the American public understand, how could Romney be so wrong on this?
Well, first off, it's pretty remarkable that a guy running for president wouldn't know that the federal government actually uses resources to put cops and firefighters on the street and teachers in classrooms. That happens normally. It happened especially when the economy collapsed. Stop and think about this. The president walked into office when the Bush economy collapsed. The president delivered a stimulus program that helped us put police on the street in Minneapolis and police across the country. Those programs continued. There's something called the SAFER grant that we just got that puts 6 firefighters on the street in Minneapolis, and that's true across the country. Now, I guess I can understand why Mitt Romney wouldn't seem to know about it, because I met with a group of Massachusetts mayors a few months back, and they just said that this Governor Romney was frankly clueless about how to work with cities and local services. The most basic form of government is to educate a kid, to keep your streets safe, to keep the house from burning down. You bet we should have a partnership on that. It's not flush times, but the fact of the matter is Mitt Romney would remove cops from the street, firefighters from the street, teachers from the classrooms. I consider that dangerous.
Yeah, pretty much dangerous. How much do you think local... Go on, I'm sorry. I was going to ask you, how do you think... Go on. Mm-hmm.
The thing that's happened is in tough times, mayors have to make tough decisions. We've all had to cut back. There's no doubt about it. There, we're 4,100 employees in Minneapolis when I took over, and sadly we have 3,700. We've all cut back and had to make tough choices.
Sure.
What happened, however, is the president stepped up and said, look, in these tough times, let's help you hire back a firefighter whose job was lost, or put a teacher back in a classroom. That's what was important, and it's so important to remember during the election that Mitt Romney can stand on his high horse and pretend what he wants done. The president came into a crisis. He lifted out a hand to mayors who deliver services to cities across the country. I'm down here at the Mayor's Conference in Orlando. We all get that.
Right.
Mitt Romney doesn't. That's why I don't think he should be president.
Well, let me ask you this then. What's at stake then for him to make that denial? Because obviously there's some political capital to be derived from such an assertion. So you're telling us that local governments depend a great deal on federal dollars to provide teachers, police officers, and firefighters support. His denial of it obviously has some political advantage. What is it?
Well, I think Mitt Romney is trying to paint this picture that he's a quote-unquote job creator when the private sector created all these jobs and government doesn't create jobs. There are two problems with that. Number one, he laid off a whole boatload of people when he was in the private sector. And by the way, when he was in Massachusetts, he did the same thing to the firefighters, the teachers, and the police officers. So what really matters is if you like your cop, if you like your firefighter, if you like your teacher, in tough times, you have a president who helped keep them on the job, and you have a guy running for president, Mitt Romney, who take him off the job.
Right.
Pretty clear choice to me.
Right, no doubt. R.T. Rybach, thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks.
Racial animus cost candidate Obama votes in 2008, even though he won by a comfortable margin. They could be a factor in a much closer election. That's next. And a former Rick Scott administration official is blowing the whistle on Florida's voter purge. He reveals the operation was mismanaged from the start. We'll have the latest. Stay tuned.